Hey guys, this is the Mostly MMA Podcast. I'm Paul Bryant here. We're here every Monday, and today we have a special guest with Jacob Duran, best known as Stitch, a famous UFC Cutman. Hey Stitch, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you, Paul, for having me, man. It's always fun and talk and just tell stories, man. So let's get it on.
Yeah, man. I definitely love it. I get a guy on here whose life has revolved around the fight business and stuff. What can you tell me about your new book?
Well, it's a continuation of the first one. The first one, From the Fields to the Garden, and it was named from the fields because I grew up as a farm worker, and the garden was actually Madison Square Garden, because that was my goal, was to make it to Madison Square Garden, and I've been there. As a matter of fact, I'll be there again June 24th for Bellator. So that's the name of the book, and it became so successful, Paul, that people were asking about a second book, and I think 4 or 5 years later, I decided to go ahead and come out with it, after the UFC released me, and, so many other things that had happened, had to come out with that one. So that's called From the Fields to the Garden, too. So in reality, it's just a continuation of the first one.
What was the process like in writing a book?
It was fun. What made it fun was the author, Zach Robinson. During the time when I wrote my first book, there were like 2-3 other authors. The guys that did Matthew's book, and they did Chuck Liddell's book. They talked to me about writing books, and I'm the kind of guy where if you want to do it, let's do it. And they never got back to me. But this guy, Zach Robinson, that is a school teacher in Germany, sent me an email, and like I said, I'm the kind of guy that said, if you want to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
So it turns out that I was going to be in Germany 2 weeks later for the Klitschko fight. So him and I met, and he's played baseball like me. He's from Oklahoma, and we spent 3 days together and shook hands and wrote the first book. But it was fun. What Zach did, and what's so good at is he understands what I've gone through, and then he's a statistician, so he's the one that brings out all these figures and made the book very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Where can we find that at?
That's available at Amazon.com. You can go up there and pick it up. It's on Kindle and Amazon, so pick them both up. And what was great with the second one, it came out right before Christmas, and so the ones that didn't read the first one picked up the first one, the second one. Worked out good for me.
What kind of stuff can we expect inside to read inside of that?
You got to read it, brother. But there's
yeah.
There's a lot of good stories. A lot of behind the scenes stories that I have and have had and continue to have with so many of these great fighters. And then you get to see the perspective that I have, that I lived through, and I don't think anybody has, the type of relationship I have with not only one fighter, but a whole volume of fighters. And, over the weekend, I co-host MMA Junkie Radio, and we had our big 10th year reunion for these guys, and Stephan Bonner was there, and Brad Tavares, and Anthony, and Chivi, and Jukawani, and some other fighters. But, Stephan Bonner was talking about how, him and I have been together for so many years, and I've worked on his cut so many times. So, there's a lot of those stories are in the book.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. Definitely a classic for fight fans. Put down the Twilight.
Yeah, it is. And, what made the first book so interesting is so many guys, including myself. I mean, when was the last time you actually read a book, right?
Yeah.
But these guys said, man, I couldn't put the book down. And, I had many more than one said when they were reading the book, it made it feel as if I was talking to them personally. So, they're 2 good books, and, I recommend you get them.
Yeah, the best stories are always ones that are based in real life.
Yeah, and then, like I said, and it's the thing with, the guys that are boxing enthusiasts or MMA enthusiasts is that you get to see stories that, that I lived through.
Yeah.
With these guys one-on-one, and it's pretty special.
One of the fan questions I got for you was that in your book you said that you had dreamed of playing pro baseball. What position did you play?
I used to play third base.
Third base.
And you know what was pretty cool? Yeah, because that was my whole dream is to play professional baseball. But growing up as a farm worker, I walked down to a college, Merced College, to start playing ball with them, and I lived like 9 miles away from the town where Merced was at, and I would go to school with my friends. I didn't have a car, so I would go to school with my friends, and after school they would leave, and I would stay and practice, and then from there I would have to thumb it going back home. And I was so naive that I didn't understand anything about grants or scholarships, and so I just kind of quit and joined the Air Force, and turned out that that's what got me here.
Yeah.
But it was funny because there was watches. Watches is one of the things that I have. I have sponsors that give me watches because my hands are always on TV and all that. Well, this one guy, J.D. Thorough from Seattle, met me at one of the UFC fights in Las Vegas years ago, and at the end of our gathering, he gave me a nice watch, but he also pulled out a glove and a baseball, and he wanted to play catch. But I was with my family, and it was after the weigh-ins, and he kind of caught me off guard, but that was a nice little sign from him.
Yeah, for sure, man. I love it. How has Bellator been treating you?
Super. And the thing with Bellator is I've known Scott Coker for 30, 35 years. When I had my school of kickboxing, I'm from the Bay Area, from Northern California. Obviously, Scott used to be the promoter, so my fighters would literally fight under his card. And Javier Mendez now that trains, a.k.a. Javier Mendez. I mean, he trains Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier and all these guys. Well, he was actually a kickboxer. He used to fight at 175 pounds, and I worked with him, and that was one of Scott's guys. So we have a great relationship, but coming on board, he gave me everything that I had when I was with the UFC before they let me go, plus he's paying me more money.
So, there you go.
So it's been a blessing, and he knows that I bring a lot of value to Bellator.
Yeah, definitely. It was a pretty outspoken. A lot of fighters were outspoken about your departure with the UFC. Was there maybe someone that kind of spoke out for you that surprised you?
Well, even Saturday when I was with Stephen Bonner, he's telling these guys, Stitch is the first guy to speak out. And but there's been so many, and even now, and you're talking about fighters, but not only the fighters, but the fans. But the thing with the fighters is they're a little bit more politically correct because of the position that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did the movie Creed with Sylvester Stallone and Michael B. Jordan, I was at the premiere, and Wesley Snipes comes up to me, and first thing that he says is, "Hey man, the UFC did you wrong." And I'm looking at him, and I get a big smile on my face because I expected some kind of compliments about the movie, but Hollywood understood, and they know that what the UFC did was wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, it sucks. He's kind of like the first casualty of it. To take away sponsors and just pull that on people, like, hey, you're getting a pay reduction. That's a tough one, especially the Cutman and stuff, and like Dana just really not taking care of his bottom people.
Yeah, and what made it difficult was that some of the fighters got paid a little bit. Definitely not what they were worth in sponsorships. But we, the Cutman, they took away our sponsors. They excluded me because, I'm the one that negotiated for all these other guys. But they took our sponsors away, and we had no compensation. And, I tried to meet with them 2 or 3 times within that year, and they just kept telling us that there was no money in the budget. So, they weren't interested in us. They were more interested in making dollars and cents. But it turns out that, them letting me go really affected their program a lot. And even Reebok. I even had the guy from Reebok call me in and was trying to kiss up to me and tell me that he had nothing to do with my being released.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it definitely hurt the Reebok company.
Yeah, I still scratch my head about the Reebok deal. I still really just don't understand how that benefited the company or the fighters or any of the workers. I can't understand the Reebok deal. I still can't.
Yeah, as you look at business, you look at sponsorships, and the money that, number one, that these companies, these Nikes and Under Armour and Reebok, the money that they give individual athletes is a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the UFC it really kind of got screwed on their deal, because I think they should have got a lot more based on what they're giving them. If you go to any university and all that, let's say Oregon, the Ducks, Nike sponsors them, and I think they're getting a lot more money than the UFC got from Reebok.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. Do you think the Reebok deal is the number one reason that we've seen a lot of fighters start signing with Bellator?
Yeah, I think so. I think that has a lot to do with it. And the thing with sponsorship is the UFC created that sponsorship program for all of us. They took a tax from, the afflictions and the bad boys and, the tap outs and all that stuff. And so they made money off of that, but they created that to the point where it became a successful program for the athletes and even the Cutman. And then they literally just kind of yanked it out with, the option not being as good. If you're going to do a program, the program should be better the second time than it is the first time.
Yeah, for sure. You think about like basketball players and stuff. They all have shoe contracts, and they wear them shoes on the court. And that would be devastating for a lot of them to be able to told, hey, you can't have your shoe contracts anymore.
Yeah, right. Like this guy with the ball that's coming up. His dad just turned down a $10 million shoe contract for his son. And, I'm not telling how many years that $10 million is worth, but I bet you he could renegotiate and probably get some more down the road.
Definitely. Now, you've been in quite a bit of movies. What was that like working on Creed and with Sylvester Stallone?
I tell you, it blows my mind even now, because number one, I'm not an actor,
right,
by any means, and but to be called to basically play the role that you do in life, and to play myself was it still blows my mind. And during the filming of Creed, I had spent 6 weeks in Philadelphia, so I'm there, and I tell Stallone and I tell Ryan Coogler, who's director, that I can't sleep at night because I'm thinking, what am I doing here? In the filming that we do every day, I just know that this movie is going to be a hit,
mm-hmm.
and it just blows my mind that I'm part of it. I always go back to that little kid as a farm worker. So growing up as a farm worker and then being in Philadelphia doing a second movie with Stallone, because I did the last Balboa movie,
right,
when Rocky had his last fight. I was in the other corner, but nonetheless, I've had the privilege of being involved in two Rocky movies. So I'll give you a little behind the scenes stuff. Is in the script, my name is Marcel, and everybody I read that to, they started laughing, and so I have to, try to figure out a way to change that to change it, And,
yeah.
But when it was time for the movie where Rocky's introducing the team to Adonis, he refers to me as Stitch. This is Stitch, the best cut man in Philadelphia. And deep inside, Paul, I'm just kind of thinking, oh, yes, right on. Who's going to tell Stallone? Cut. His name's not Stitch. His name is Marcel.
Right.
So the next day, I tell Sly, look, man, I want to thank you for, using my name. He goes, no. He goes, it has to be authentic. And so, I was glad that he did.
That's an awesome story. I love that, man. I'm a huge fan of the Rocky franchise. I can't tell you how many times I've rewatched that, and just Creed. I rewatched the movie Creed a lot. That was a really great movie.
Yeah, and the thing with Stallone is when I did the first one, Balboa, I looked at him, and he wrote on that one. He wrote, directed, and acted, so he did everything, right? So I have a picture, where he's giving us instructions. He has his boxing glove on, and there's a break, and he's giving us his instructions. But I'm looking, and I'm thinking, he's such a master at what he does.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he brought that into Creed, and it just really kind of benefited it, because a lot of people think that he wrote and directed it, but it was actually Ryan Coogler, at that time was a 28-year-old director and writer from Oakland, California.
Do you know if there's any rumors of maybe another Rocky movie?
Well, yeah, from what Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan told me, they're big advocates of Andre Ward. As a matter of fact, Andre Ward is going to be having the rematch with Kovalov in a couple of weeks, and I would expect to probably see one of them, if not two of them. But when we were in Oakland, I was talking to Michael B. Jordan, and they're definitely considering the second one. And I think right now both of them are filming Black Panther. Ryan Coogler is directing it, and that's the new Marvel movie, and Michael B. Jordan's in it. And I think once that finishes, which I would hopefully think would be by the end of the year, then I think the chances of seeing Creed 2 are real good.
You do you see yourself maybe having an appearance on that one too?
Oh, of course, man. That's already been understood. That's why I can't wait to I can't wait to get the green light on that. But yeah, they're gonna keep the same team. Makes sense. I don't know about Stallone, Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
How they're gonna write him in because during the movie he had cancer.
Right.
So I don't know how that's gonna be finished up, but I'm still alive and healthy, and I plan on being on there.
Sweet, man. I'm looking forward to that. Now, UFC 33. Now that was your first event you worked at, right, for the UFC?
Yeah, it was. That was knowing what I know now, I didn't know that Pat Miletich had Jess Pulver and Dave Monet, and those are the first two guys that I wrapped in my career with the UFC. And Matt Hughes was in the dressing room, and I don't even know if Robbie Lawler was there at that time. He was probably a young pup, but not knowing how instrumental Pat Miletich was in the mixed martial arts, I found out later that I was in there with royalty. And I remember I saw Ken Shamrock one time I think we did some show somewhere, and I was looking at him, and I said, you look familiar, and then everybody's looking at me and starts laughing, and you're like, yeah, he's familiar because that's Ken Shamrock, So show you how naive I was about the wrestling and the mixed martial arts.
That's great. What inspired you to get into that line of work?
I had my own school of kickboxing, so doing that, I trained fighters, and I taught kids, I taught adults, but I did everything. I promoted fights, I managed the fighters I worked with, and being a cutman was one of the duties that I had to learn to do because of economics, but I really liked working as a cutman, and 21 years ago I made the move to Vegas, and at that point it was only boxing, but I came solely as a cutman. But when I started, because I thought all the great trainers in the world for boxing were here in Las Vegas, and when I started hanging out at the gyms, I started seeing the work that these coaches were doing, and I could do the same thing. So I started working with fighters, and from there on, the UFC came around, and I had known Dana through the boxing industry, and he offered me a position with the UFC when they came on board, and basically that just kind of changed my whole demographics.
Do you see ever a chance that you may work with the UFC again?
I was asked that question yesterday, actually, and there's always that possibility. I've learned through businesses, you never turn down a conversation about an opportunity, and
right.
But if it would, if I would come back, it would have to be completely under different terms, and but yeah, bottom line, and in all fairness, Paul, if you kind of look at the structure of where the UFC is now, where they were back then, there's a lot of negative things going on. The fan base, the fighters, everybody's so pissed off at them, right? That if they wanted to really do something on a positive note, they would bring back Bert and Stitch. And Bert and I were together this weekend here in Las Vegas for the MMA gathering. But wouldn't you think that it would bring some kind of positive note if they decided to bring Bert and myself back?
Oh yeah, I agree. That would definitely be a good PR move, and show them, hey, admit that they made a mistake, because they just jumped on that and made a rash decision.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and when you deal with tough egos, it's tough to go back on saying, okay, I made a mistake. But not only that, but even for the the safety and the concerns of the fighters, because nobody was better at what we did than Bert and I. And as Bert and I were talking this weekend, we put that program together. We're the ones that developed the program that not only the UFC uses and, the fight with the fighters as Bert would take care of them and me as a cut man, but every other organization in the world, you see them doing the same thing that we put together, the plan we put together. And, if you look at all these cut men, their whole techniques are patterned after the techniques that I got established.
Yeah.
And to me, it's an honorable thing. I'm glad they're doing it, because if you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
Yeah, for sure. I know that I seen a lot of comments not too long ago where Yair Rodriguez had fought Frankie Edgar, and he got his eye messed up pretty good. And in between the rounds, Joe Rogan had mentioned in the commentary that they needed to fix that eye, and they hadn't. And I seen a lot of people had said, where's Stitch at when you need him?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how I still get so much fan support, but we were talking about that fight also. And that is a good example of what happens when you bring in cutmen, quote unquote cutmen, that are qualified at the A level.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened there is, this guy here, for the most part, was a paramedic. And he talked himself into working with the UFC, and he might be good at what he does as a paramedic, but when you have 50 seconds to determine the career of a fighter,
mm-hmm.
then you have to understand what the priorities are, right? So
yeah.
What happened there is Yair had a big swelling. He had a big goose egg right under his cheek, which is dangerous. I mean, it's because if it closes up the eye, you can't see, then you're at a disadvantage. But he also had a small cut underneath the swelling. So this cut man went in there and not understanding really the full concerns of the priorities, he went after that small cut that wasn't even a problem because it's below the eye. So if it does bleed, it's not going to get in his eyes. But it wasn't really bleeding that much, and he neglected to take care of that swelling. And that was just a basic one-on-one mistake that anybody that's learning how to be a cut man understands, that you take care of the priority. The priority was a swelling, and he neglected it. And not to say that, he would have been able to do anything to save the eye from closing, because that's a very difficult thing at that point. But the point is that he went in there in an A-level type of situation and didn't do A-level type of work, and that's a concern, because now Yair was the young upcoming star, though he fought Frankie Edgar, and Frankie literally just schooled him, right? But,
oh yeah.
But he took away any advantage. He took away any advantage that this kid had. So it literally rerouted his whole career.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think that if you were there, you could have maybe got Yair into that third round? I think they stopped it at the end of the second. The doctor called it.
Yeah, I think so. I think, the thing is, number one is having confidence. Whenever a doctor or a referee looks at a cut, it's because the fighter is at a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, Yair's eye was you could still see he had that mouse, so you would, try to keep it down. And, and the thing would be to take him into the third round.
Yeah.
And then have him, because, usually you'll go into the third round and it'd be a lot more difficult to stop the fight than if they do it in between rounds. And I think, the doctor knowing what I am capable of doing, I think would have made a difference, and he would have let it go into the second round. Or to the third round.
Well, that right there is why you need the best working with the best. That's for sure, man.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. That's what I'm saying. It's the UFC, since Bert and I left, the program is literally just kind of not as efficient as it used to be before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you need that. That's an important part of the game, getting your fighters fixed in between rounds.
During the fight, that is literally the most important position for anybody. You have your coach that can give you the instructions. You have the referee that will go ahead and direct the fight and break it up when you have to. But when you have a situation that could determine, that could give the referee or the doctor an idea to terminate the fight, it's your job to eliminate that. So during fight time, the importance of a cutman is extremely important.
No doubt, man. That's tough. I was going to ask you, will you be watching the fights coming up here? Jose Aldo versus Max Holloway. Will you be seeing that one?
I don't even know what it is.
I think it's UFC 212. I think that's Saturday.
No, I'll be in Montreal for boxing on Showtime.
Oh, okay, yeah. Do you?
But I don't, unless I'm out with somebody, like Stipe when he fought his last fight. I was with some friends, so we were at a sports bar. But usually I don't. But in the same token, a lot of the weekends I'm out traveling and doing my own thing. So
yeah,
I don't have that opportunity as much as I did.
No, I understand. What do you think about the Floyd Mayweather and the Conor McGregor stuff? The supposed boxing match.
I go to Mayweather's gym all the time, and at least once a week. Definitely once every 2 weeks for sure. And the last time I was there with some friends, Floyd was there, and he's bringing it up to me, and he said, "Yeah, it's going to happen." But when I first heard about it, I thought it was crazy, it was insane, and that it never happened. But as you break it down on the marketing side of it, it's a very ingenious thing. And I think the hype is going to be way bigger than the fight.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, is it going to happen? There's a high probability. I think they just have to iron out all these details, but it has to happen, within the next 6, 7, 8 months, because any longer, Floyd's getting old.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens.
Do you think that Conor has a chance in that match?
I tell people that I think the first 2 or 3 rounds could be very. That's his best way, his best opportunity of winning a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Floyd this. I said, the thing about it is Conor is accustomed to grappling. He's accustomed to close-in combat. And if I was coaching Conor McGregor, I would tell him to bum rush Floyd, get him on the ropes, and work from the midsection on up to the top of the head. Because if you try to hit him in the head, you're going to miss. So
yeah.
You go to the body, you go to the arms, and then you finish up at the head. And he's capable of knocking anybody out. So in that aspect, that's his only opportunity of really winning the fight. But after that, Floyd will figure him out. Once he figures him out, then it'd be a very dull looking fight. He'll send it to school.
Yeah. Recently, I think it was Oscar De La Hoya had said that this would kill boxing. What do you think about that? Do you think that this match would hurt boxing or help MMA, or how would you evaluate that?
Yeah, it's not going to hurt boxing at all. It's when I first started with the UFC, Jim Lampley's and all these guys, the boxing guys, would talk MMA with me, and they would all negative talk about it and all that. Now I go into any place and everybody's talking MMA with me, right? So the mentality of the game has changed, but it wouldn't hurt boxing at all, and it won't hurt MMA at all. If anything, it puts more of a light on both sports, But yeah, you're going to have Oscar De La Hoya saying that because, he's a competitor.
Right.
You also have Gilbert Mendoza, the president of the WBC, or the WBA, which is one of the biggest sanctioning bodies, is saying that he won't sanction it and he's not going to support it because it's going to affect these guys somehow down the road, and it's economics. But on an economic base, it's going to make a lot of sense for both Floyd and Conor McGregor.
Yeah, it definitely should be a big payday. Do you think that we'll ever see a day where MMA fighters are paid as much as boxers?
Yeah, I think so. Keep in mind now, if in boxing there's an adage that says 1% of the fighters make 99% of the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so my point is, if you take away the cream of the crop, right,
mm-hmm.
and you look at the boxers below that status, the secondary status, a lot of these guys in MMA are making as much, if not more money than them. So not every fighter in boxing makes a lot of money. It's still quite common for a fighter to do 10 rounds and get paid $10,000-$15,000.
Right.
Where in MMA you get a fighter that is a good seasoned B-rated type of fighter. He fights a 3-rounder, he's making 15 and 15.
Yeah.
So there's a misconception with boxers making all this money. Boxers make a lot of money, but it's only that 1%.
Right. I know that's what Conor McGregor said when he was talking about fighting Floyd. He's like, I thought boxing was where the money was at when they were kind of trying to lowball him at first.
Well, yeah, it is. In that situation, and that's that 1%, that's the cream of the crop. These guys are going to make a shitload of money.
Yeah.
Right? But the guys on the undercard, because, let's say Floyd and Conor have their big fight. It's going to sell a whole lot of money, or make a whole lot of money. But the guys that are on the undercard, they're not going to make that much, not compared to what these guys are making.
Right. Definitely. What did you think about, shifting gears here for a second, what did you think about Rory McDonald's Bellator debut?
I was so proud of him, man. I'm glad I've always been a big fan and supporter of Rory, and from the young days when he was kickboxing, he was just a dominant factor. And the first day that he came into working the UFC, so I've always been a big fan. And as a matter of fact, my last biggest fight was when he fought Robbie Lawler.
Oh man!
And he's always been a warrior.
Yeah, that speaking of epic fights, that one's right up there on my top of the list for favorite fight. Do you have a favorite fight, boxing or MMA? Do you have a favorite one?
Man, there's too many of them for me to even count. I've been blessed with so many and been involved in so many that it's tough to just to pick one. But in the MMA industry, that one right there will go down definitely as one of the top 3. And I wouldn't be surprised if that one is selected as fight of the year, or it's already been selected.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the MMA awards did on fight of the year, but that one definitely belongs up there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one actually did probably win the fight of the year or whatever award. That was something, man. Do you think the Bellator can ever really compete with the UFC?
Yeah, I think so. It's going to take a little bit of time, and on the level, and what's going to happen is the Bellator is rising up in fan popularity, and the UFC is starting to decline in fan popularity. So I think eventually they will cross paths somewhere down the road, and so I think it's important for the UFC to kind of reevaluate what they're doing.
And we seen Roy Nelson just signed with Bellator, and guys like Ryan Bader and Phil Davis, so they're getting some free agents.
Yeah, no, it's great to see those guys in the mix, and then they have that big fight in New York with Fedor and Matt, and that's going to be an awesome thing, and so yeah, they're growing. It didn't take overnight. It's not taking overnight, but the thing about it, Scott Coker and Bellator their whole thing is fighters first, and that really seems to be the trend. And they're happy being in this position, but knowing that they're growing.
Yeah, you get that reputation too, where you get some fighters. They're going over there. They got good things to say about the company, and I think it's starting to trickle down. It's starting to affect it. It's starting to help them land these free agents.
Yeah, it is. And then you look at the UFC roster, all the fighters that they have, but I don't even know half of them anymore.
Right.
And that's where the balance point will come, because you're going to have the Roy Nelsons and the Ryan Baders and the Rory McDonalds, and no telling who else will come in within the next 2-3 years. But as you lose all the legendary fighters from the UFC that you're doing now, the Frankie Edgars will be done, and the Jose Aldos and the McGregor will be no more, and you have all these fighters that have finished their rotation. The young guys, the UFC is going to have to build them up, and that's when it becomes a level playing field with Bellator and the UFC.
Yeah, definitely. Are you more of a fan of the smaller weight classes or the bigger ones?
No, I don't care, man. fighters are like my kids, you know. But I remember when I was first started doing the WEC, remember? And I didn't know anything about the WEC, but I started seeing these guys fight. I became a big fan of these guys because they were so fast and so action-packed, you know, that, but now to me, you know, it's just, I'm neutral on both of them because I have that relationship with so many of the guys that it's not so much the weight classes, but, you know, who the fighters are and what kind of relationship I have with them. Yeah,
for sure, man. What kind of social media accounts do you have where people can follow you?
Well, you know, the basic ones, you know, the Twitter, it's, like I said, Stitch Duran, and on Facebook, it's, Instagram, it's hashtag Stitch Duran. So that's it, you know, pretty simple, brother.
Good deal, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed this one, man, having you on and hearing from you. I really appreciate your time, buddy.
Oh, no, anytime, Paul. I appreciate it also.
All right, buddy.
You did a good job, so keep it up, man.
I appreciate you, brother. Anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, you know, but don't, you know, pick up the book, From the Fields to the Garden 1 and 2, actually. From the Fields to the Garden and From the Fields to the Garden 2. But also I have my new line of tape, Stitch Premium Tape, that is the first of its kind. It's water repellent, and you can go to stitchduran.com to pick that up. And, you know, and I'm selling it at the wholesale price, so I'm not there for big money. I'm just there to make sure that, you know, these trainers and fighters have, you know, has some good equipment to work with. And, you know, it's cool because Vitor Belfort, you know, uses it, and Tony Kukui Ferguson just picks them up, and Josh Barnett uses it, and, you know, so I'm there to, you know, make this game a lot safer.
Sounds good, dude. It's been a pleasure having you on.
All right, my man. Well, let's do it again, huh?
All right, for sure, dude. You take care of yourself, man.
All right. God bless.
You too, buddy. This has been another episode of Mostly MMA, guys.